17 days before my stepdaughter's wedding, my husband sent me an email with the subject line, "Conditions for attendance." Not a phone call, not a conversation at the kitchen table, not even the courtesy of sitting across from me like a man speaking to the woman who had spent 12 years helping him keep his life together. An email, like I was a contractor who needed terms before being allowed on the property. I was standing at my kitchen island when I opened it, still in my robe, my coffee cooling beside a stack of mail I had not bothered to sort. The morning light was coming through the windows in that soft, buttery way that usually made the house feel peaceful. I remember that detail because everything else in me went still. There were 5 numbered rules, 5 conditions I had to obey if I wanted to attend Aaliyah's wedding. By the time I reached the last line, I was not crying. I was not shouting. I was not pacing the floor or calling anyone to ask what this meant. I already knew exactly what it meant. My name is Camille Harper. I am 46 years old, and for 12 years I believed I was helping build a family. What I did not understand until that morning was that I had been building it almost entirely with my own money, my own patience, and my own silence. I am going to tell you what happened in the 17 days between that email and Aaliyah's wedding day. I am going to tell you why I did not attend. And I am going to tell you what was inside the gift box I mailed instead. But first, you need to hear the 5 rules, because no family explains itself more honestly than when it starts making demands. The email came from Marcus, my husband, 52 years old, polished, respected, steady in the way people admire from the outside. Marcus had built his whole life on being the reasonable man in every room, the mediator, the calm voice, the one who never lost control. For a long time, I mistook that for character. The email did not begin with my name. There was no "Camille, I know this is hard," no tenderness, no apology for reducing 12 years of marriage to a list. It opened with a sentence about wanting clarity before the big day. Then came the rules. First, I had to withdraw the civil claim I had filed over the $420,000 I invested in Aaliyah's boutique 3 years earlier, money that had disappeared along with the ownership documents Marcus promised were coming. Second, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement promising never to discuss family finances publicly or privately, not with friends, not with relatives, not with anyone connected to Aaliyah's business or wedding. Third, I had to transfer the deed to my lake house into a family trust, a property I bought 5 years before I ever met Marcus. A place paid for by my consulting work, my savings, and the kind of discipline nobody in his family seemed to respect until they wanted the results of it. Fourth, I had to contribute another $40,000 toward wedding costs. The email described it as a gesture of unity. And fifth, I had to deliver a public apology at the reception. Not a private conversation, not a moment of reconciliation. A public apology in front of 300 guests for creating division in the family. At the bottom, Marcus had typed one final sentence: "Follow all 5, or do not come." I read that sentence 3 times. There are moments in life when pain arrives loudly. It kicks in the door. It knocks the breath out of you. It makes you bend over the sink because your body understands before your mind catches up. This was not that kind of pain. This was clean, almost quiet. It was the feeling of a curtain being pulled back after years of standing in a dim room, trying to convince yourself the shapes in the corner were harmless. I saw my marriage clearly that morning. I was not being invited to a family wedding. I was being summoned to settle accounts. I was not a wife. I was a funding source with a name attached, and funding sources do not receive love. They receive instructions. I closed the email and sat very still for a few minutes. The coffee beside me had gone cold. My phone buzzed twice with messages I did not look at. Then I opened my laptop again, not to answer Marcus. I booked a week at a resort in Maui for the exact dates of the wedding weekend: oceanfront suite, spa access, a balcony that looked straight over the water, the kind of place I had talked myself out of for years because there was always tuition, or a business emergency, or a deposit, or another reason why my comfort could wait. After I made the reservation, I called a courier service that specialized in secure professional deliveries. Then I began preparing the only gift Aaliyah was ever going to receive from me again. I will not tell you everything that was inside it yet, because the order matters. What I can tell you is that it was not jewelry. It was not a check. It was not some dramatic insult wrapped in tissue paper. It was something far more difficult to dismiss. It was the truth, organized carefully enough that nobody could pretend not to understand it. To understand why I sent it, you have to go back 12 years, to the first night I met Marcus Harper and believed I was being offered a place in something whole. We met at a scholarship gala in Chicago. I was 34, divorced for 3 years, and finally starting to trust my own laugh again. I had built a good career in operations consulting. I owned my townhome. I had savings. I thought my boundaries were strong. Marcus sat beside me during dinner because the host mixed up the seating chart, or so he told me later with a smile that made the mistake feel like fate. He was charming, but not flashy. He listened carefully. He asked about my work and remembered small things from earlier conversations. At the time, his attention felt like tenderness. Now I understand that attention can also be research. Marcus had a daughter, Aaliyah, 15 years old when I met her. Her mother had died of cancer when Aaliyah was 9, and grief still lived in that house like another relative nobody spoke about directly. There were photographs of her mother in the hallway, on the piano, beside Aaliyah's bed. I never tried to compete with that. I respected it. I thought respecting it would make space for something honest between us. Aaliyah was quiet with me at first, watchful, polite in that sharp teenage way where every thank you sounds rehearsed. I did not push. I brought food when Marcus worked late. I drove her to soccer practice when her ride fell through. I sat in folding chairs at school events. I helped her pick a dress for junior prom after she rejected everything Marcus suggested. I loved her, not instantly, not in a movie way, but slowly through repetition and showing up. That love is part of why it took me so long to see what was happening, because when you love people, you can mistake their needs for your purpose. The money began small: college application fees, a spring wardrobe for campus tours, a graduation trip Marcus said he would split with me, except somehow my card was the one charged at the travel office. When Aaliyah got into a private university, Marcus said we would help with tuition together. The first semester bill arrived, and he was between bonus cycles. The second semester, he had a tax issue. The third, a client was late paying him. Each time, he looked at me with that same soft, tired expression and said, "She's just getting started, Camille." I paid. Then came the apartment her sophomore year, security deposit, first and last month's rent, furniture because she could not be expected to study on a mattress on the floor, a car repair. A credit card balance that somehow reached $11,000 while she was learning financial responsibility. I paid that too. I told myself this was what blended families required: extra patience, extra grace, extra generosity. I told myself Marcus and Aaliyah had lost enough already, and maybe I had been brought into their lives because I had the steadiness they needed. That is a beautiful thought when it is true. It is a dangerous thought when someone else learns how to use it against you. My best friend Denise saw the pattern years before I did. Denise Carter and I had known each other since college. She had sat beside me through my first divorce, my mother's surgery, and every version of myself I had outgrown. Denise loved me enough to be inconvenient. One evening, after I told her about paying off Aaliyah's credit card, she set her wine glass down and looked at me over the rim of her readers. "Helping a young woman launch is one thing," she said. "Becoming everybody's emergency fund is another." I laughed because I did not want to hear her. I told her she did not understand how delicate things were with Aaliyah. I told her Marcus carried guilt about losing his first wife and not always knowing how to parent a daughter alone. Denise listened to all of that with the expression she wears when she has decided not to argue, because life is already building the lesson. She only said, "Just make sure showing up does not become disappearing." I remembered that sentence years later, sitting in my dining room with bank statements spread across the table like evidence. The biggest request came 3 years before the wedding, when Aliyah decided she wanted to open a boutique. Not a hobby shop, not a little online store, a full brick-and-mortar boutique in a redeveloped district where rent was high and image mattered. She called it Sable and Saint. I will admit something that still hurts. I was proud of her. She came. I told myself I was buying into a family legacy, not bailing out another dream nobody had properly costed. The ownership documents never came. There was always a reason. The attorney was backed up. Aliyah was overwhelmed. The lease negotiation had changed the timeline. Marcus had a call scheduled for next week, then next month, then after opening weekend, then after the holidays. By the second year, I stopped asking in front of Aliyah because Marcus made it seem cruel. "She already feels pressure," he would say. "Don't make her feel like you don't believe in her." So I swallowed my questions. That is how a person with good judgment loses herself. Not all at once. One swallowed question at a time. When I finally filed the civil claim, it was not because I wanted war. It was because my accountant asked for documentation, and I realized I had none. Not one signed agreement, not one ownership certificate, not one clean explanation of where nearly $500,000 had gone. I asked Marcus privately first. He told me I was being dramatic. I asked Aliyah. She cried and said I was ruining the happiest season of her life. I asked again, calmly, for the paperwork that should have existed from the beginning. 3 weeks later, I received the email with the 5 rules. 2 days after that, I called a lawyer. Not someone from Marcus's circle, not a family attorney who would speak softly and try to preserve appearances. I called Portia Lang, a litigation attorney recommended by a woman from my professional network who had once told me, "Portia does not confuse politeness with weakness." Portia's office was downtown, all glass and quiet efficiency. I arrived with a folder so full it barely closed. Marcus's email, the non-disclosure agreement, the trust documents, the draft deed transfer, the boutique correspondence. Portia read silently for a long time. I watched her expression change as she read, not dramatically. Not future business partners, not even close friends, depending on how aggressively the agreement was interpreted. And in exchange, I could sit in a ballroom, smile for photographs, give another $40,000, and apologize for refusing to keep being used quietly. Portia took off her glasses and set them on the desk. "This is not about wedding attendance," she said. "This is a pressure campaign. They are using the ceremony as emotional leverage to get you to sign away legal rights." I looked down at my hands in my lap. They were perfectly still. "So, if I sign this," I said, "I am admitting the money was always a gift." "Yes." "And if I say anything afterward, they can come after me." "Yes." "And if I do not sign, I cannot attend." Portia's mouth tightened slightly. "Camille, they are not inviting you. They are trying to purchase your silence with a seat at a table you helped pay for." That sentence settled into me like a stone dropped into deep water. I told Denise, but someone else joked that stepmothers could be unpredictable. Aliyah wrote back, "Camille is too soft. She'll sign anything if Dad asks." I read that sentence until the words stopped looking like words. Too soft. Not generous, not loving, not supportive. Not the woman who had paid tuition, helped assemble her first apartment, and sat beside her when opening week overwhelmed her. Too soft. That was what my love had become in her mouth. A weakness. Denise reached across the table and took my hand. For once, she did not say anything. She did not need to. Some betrayals are too clear for commentary. I almost called Marcus then. I picked up my phone and opened his contact. I could already hear his patient voice telling me I was taking things out of context and that this was not the time to make everything ugly. I set the phone down. Arguments give dishonest people oxygen. They turn facts into feelings. They turn records into misunderstandings. They turn theft into hurt feelings on both sides. I was it began at first. A week before the wedding, Aaliyah's planner sent a message to the wrong group thread. It was meant for vendors and immediate family logistics, but I had not been removed from one of the older threads. I read it because my name appeared in the preview. The message outlined a special family gift ceremony during the reception. Before the first dance, immediate family members would present gifts on a small stage beside the head table. Each gift would be opened in front of the guests. Then I saw the line that made everything clear. Save Camille's gift for last. She always goes big. Aaliyah had written it herself in a forwarded note. She expected one last performance of my generosity, maybe diamonds, maybe a cashier's check, maybe some sentimental heirloom she could hold up while guests applauded. I decided she would get exactly what she asked for, something big. I ordered a walnut keepsake box with a brass clasp and a velvet interior. Beautiful, understated, and expensive enough to look appropriate on a gift table. Inside, I placed a family photograph from a lake house trip years earlier. Aaliyah was 17 in the picture, standing between Marcus and me with the sun in her eyes. I chose it because I did not want to pretend there had never been tenderness. Under the photograph, I placed a handwritten letter, not an attack, not a curse. 3 paragraphs. I wrote that I had loved being part of her life. I wrote that I would no longer confuse love with financial surrender, and that whatever happened next would be a consequence of choices already made. Below the letter, I placed a flash drive containing the presentation. Then 4 sealed envelopes, one addressed to Marcus, one to Aaliyah, one to Andre Bell, her fiancé, one to the family attorney who was expected to be present that weekend to finalize the trust documents Marcus wanted me to sign. Each envelope contained copies of the relevant documents. The conditions email, the trust clauses, the boutique transfers, the business records, the message from Aaliyah, the vendor emails, clean, complete, labeled. No one could say later that they had not been shown. There was one final piece. Months earlier, before the email, before Portia, before the truth became a file folder with tabs, Aaliyah had asked me to create a tribute video for the reception, a sentimental montage of family photos. She said it would mean so much if I put it together because I had always been the one who remembered birthdays, framed pictures, saved programs, kept the family archive. Back then, I said yes. So when the planner followed up asking whether the tribute file was ready, I sent her the presentation video Imani had exported. I wrote, "This is the final tribute. Please play it during the family gift segment as discussed." The planner thanked me within 10 minutes. "Approved for playback," she wrote. I sat back in my chair and felt nothing like triumph. People imagine revenge as a hot thing. They imagine satisfaction, adrenaline, some dramatic thrill. What I felt was tired, not uncertain, not guilty, just tired in the way you are after carrying something heavy for so long that setting it down does not feel like freedom at first. It only feels like realizing how much it hurt. Denise flew with me to Maui 3 days before the wedding. She insisted. I told her I would be fine alone, and she told me she was coming anyway. Our suite had a wraparound balcony and a view so beautiful it almost felt rude. At sunset, the sky turned gold, then coral, then violet. On the first evening, Denise and I sat outside with glasses of wine we barely touched. "Any second thoughts?" she asked. I looked at the water for a long time. "Not about sending it," I said, "only about how long it took me to believe I deserved to." We sat there in the quiet, listening to the waves, letting grief have its proper space. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. I made coffee in the little kitchenette and stood barefoot on the balcony while the sky slowly brightened. I did not put on makeup. I did not steam a dress. I did not text Marcus. The question had already been answered. Around mid-afternoon Hawaii time, I opened my laptop and logged into the wedding live stream. Marcus's cousin had set it up for relatives who could not travel. I used a name that would not draw attention and kept the volume low until the reception began. Denise sat beside me with her knees tucked under her, a mug of coffee in both hands. "You can turn it off any time," she said. "I know. I mean it. I know." The live stream connected to a ballroom in Chicago just after the first course had been served. Even through the slightly grainy phone camera near the back of the room, I recognized the place immediately. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids, gold-rimmed chargers, tall candles. It was beautiful. That bothered me more than I expected. There is an ache in watching money you sacrificed turn into elegance for people who planned to erase the sacrifice. Aaliyah looked radiant. I will not take that from her. Her gown was ivory, fitted through the waist, with a long, clean train that caught the light every time she moved. Her hair was swept back, her earrings bright at her neck. She laughed with her bridesmaids near the head table, one hand resting on Andre's arm. Marcus stood nearby in a charcoal suit, smiling like a man whose plan had held. I wondered if he had told people I was ill, traveling, or still emotional. I wondered if anyone had asked why the woman who had helped raise his daughter was missing. Then I remembered that people are often trained not to ask questions that might disturb the shine. The MC announced the gift ceremony after dinner plates were cleared. He was cheerful, polished, microphone in hand, talking about legacy and gratitude. Marcus stepped onto the small platform and praised family generosity. By the second, it began to tremble. By the third, her eyes were moving too quickly. That was when the screen behind the head table changed. The tribute video began automatically. The room expected music, family photos, maybe my voice over old vacation clips, something warm enough to make people dab at their eyes and call Aaliyah blessed. Instead, the first slide appeared, a family history in documents. The room's noise lowered, not all at once, but in layers. Conversations faded, chairs shifted. Someone laughed nervously near the microphone and then stopped. The second slide showed the first boutique transfer, date, amount, account, purpose. Beside it, Marcus's text message promising formal ownership paperwork. The next slide showed the second transfer, then the third, then the running total. $420,000, no commentary, no accusation, just the number, the dates, and the promises. Then came the trust language. Highlighted clauses explaining how I would waive all claims, release Marcus and Aaliyah from liability, classify previous transfers as gifts, and remain silent afterward under the NDA. On the live stream, I could hear murmurs gather. Not shock yet. Recognition. The sound of people realizing the story they had been told did not match the document in front of them. Then the presentation moved to the boutique expenses, Amalfi Coast trip, business category, vendor sourcing, designer handbags, business category, inventory samples, cosmetic procedure, business category, marketing consultation, restaurant charges, business category, client development, wedding venue deposit, source account, Sable and Saint operating funds. Aaliyah turned toward Marcus. Even through the camera, I saw the moment she understood what was coming next. Marcus moved first. He crossed toward the DJ booth with a tight smile, the crisis management smile I had seen anywhere the truth threatened to embarrass him in public. The planner intercepted him. A nearby microphone caught enough. "Mrs. Harper approved this file," she said. Mrs. Harper. I had not expected that to hit me, but it did. For 12 years, that name had sounded like belonging. In that moment, it sounded like authority. The next slide appeared before Marcus could stop anything. Vendor emails, the florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator, the lighting company. Each one included the same sentence from Marcus. "Camille will cover it." The room went very quiet. Then came Aaliyah's message. Black background, white text, no embellishment. "Camille is too soft. She'll sign anything if Dad asks." Denise reached for my hand. I let her take it. On the screen, Aaliyah stood under the chandeliers with the walnut box still open in front of her. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Andre turned away from the presentation and looked directly at her. His face changed. Not theatrically. It changed the way a face changes when trust leaves it. You sure? Yes. Because there is a line between witnessing truth and feeding on someone else's collapse. I had no desire to cross it. I had done what I came to do, or rather, I had refused to do what they demanded I do. The rest belonged to them. Denise and I sat on the balcony until the sky went dark. We did not talk much. Every now and then my phone lit up on the table beside me. Marcus called first, then Aliyah, then Marcus again, then numbers I did not recognize, text messages stacked up in previews I did not open. Camille, call me, this is not what you think, you humiliated us, we need to talk. Denise turned my phone face down. Not tonight, she said, so not tonight became the first boundary I kept. The next morning, I walked on the beach before breakfast. The water was warm around my ankles, and for the first time in days, my body felt like it belonged entirely to me. When I returned to the suite, Portia had emailed, "Do not respond directly to any of them. Forward all communication to me." I did exactly that. In the weeks that followed, the story traveled faster than I expected, not because I spread it. I did not post the presentation, I did not send it to blogs, I did not call family members to explain myself. But 300 guests had phones, and secrecy rarely survives documented truth. By the time I returned home, Marcus had moved into a guest room at his brother's house. Aliyah had temporarily closed the boutique, announcing that she was taking time after private family matters. Private is what people call harm after it becomes public. Portia handled the legal side with calm precision. Marcus's attorney tried to argue that my transfers had been family gifts. Portia responded with his written promises, my repeated requests for documents, the conditions email, and the trust language designed to erase the very claims he now said had never existed. Mediation came 4 months later. By then the boutique was collapsing. Its business partner withdrew. Vendors began demanding shorter payment terms. Aliyah's polished public image had cracked, and it turned out the store had been surviving less on customer loyalty than on the illusion that money would always arrive in time. Marcus had to liquidate assets to settle with me. Not everything I lost came back, but I recovered enough to restore the accounts I had damaged trying to support them, and to look at my financial life without feeling underwater. The lake house stayed mine. That mattered more to me than I can fully explain. It was not the most expensive property in the world. 2 bedrooms, a screened porch, uneven steps down to a dock. But I bought it before Marcus, before Aliyah, before I became Mrs. Harper. Keeping it felt like reclaiming a version of myself I had almost signed away. Marcus asked to meet 6 months after the wedding. At first, I ignored the request. Then he sent it through Portia's office. I said yes eventually, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted to see whether he could name what he did. We met at a coffee shop neither of us had ever visited together, neutral ground. He looked older, not dramatically, but enough. The careful polish was still there, but the confidence had thinned around the edges. He apologized. Sort of. He said he never meant for things to get so out of hand. He said he thought he was protecting Aliyah. He said he had been trying to keep the peace after everything his daughter had already lost. I listened. Not because I believed him, but because I wanted to hear whether the truth had taught him a new language. It had not. I thought keeping the family together mattered most, he said, turning his coffee cup slowly between both hands. I remember the afternoon light on the table and the hiss of the espresso machine. Peace built on one person's sacrifice is not peace, I told him. It is exploitation with good manners. He looked down. For once, Marcus Harper had no polished answer. We finished our coffee in almost complete silence. After that, communication went through attorneys. The divorce was not simple, but it was clean in the ways that mattered. I no longer accepted conversations without records or treated guilt as evidence. Aliyah wrote to me once. It was a long email. Too long, maybe. She said she had been ashamed. She said she had let her father handle money because it was easier not to know. She said she did not recognize herself in that bridesmaid message anymore. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Portia and did not answer. Some people will think that was cold. Maybe it was, but I had spent 12 years proving my warmth to people who measured it by what they could take from me. I did not owe immediate access because they finally felt regret. Andre never married her. I heard through Denise that they tried counseling, separated quietly, then called it off for good. I did not celebrate that. The boutique closed before winter. Someone sent me a photo of the empty storefront after the sign came down. I deleted it. There was no joy in seeing the dream gone. That is the part people do not always understand about stories like mine. Being right does not make everything feel good. Truth can free you and still leave bruises where the chains were. A year to the day after the wedding that did not finish, I went back to Maui alone. Denise wanted to come, but her sister was having surgery, and I told her I was ready to make the trip by myself. I stayed at the same resort, in a smaller room this time. I only needed the water, the quiet, and the reminder that my life could still contain beauty. On the anniversary evening, I walked along the shoreline as the sun lowered itself into the ocean. I thought about the woman I had been at that gala 12 years earlier. Hopeful, careful, ready to believe that love after disappointment meant being chosen into a family that needed her. I do not hate that woman. She was doing her best with the information she had and the tenderness she wanted to offer. But I wish I could tell her that generosity is holy only when it is freely given, not when it is extracted through guilt. I wish I could tell her that being strong for everybody is not the same as being loved by them. Most of all, I wish I could tell her that family is not proven by how much of yourself you are willing to lose. The gift I mailed was called Cruel by people who preferred my silence. I understand why they needed that story. If I was cruel, then Marcus did not exploit me. If I was cruel, then Aaliyah did not calculate my softness. If I was cruel, then the wedding fell apart because I exposed the truth, not because the truth existed, but I know what I sent. I sent documents, I sent dates, I sent proof. I sent one final gift to a family that had confused my love with access, and I stayed away. That was the part nobody expected. They expected me to show up, smile, apologize, sign, pay, and preserve the version of the family that made everyone comfortable except me. Instead, I chose myself in writing. Peace is beautiful when it is honest. Peace is healing when everyone carries their own weight. But peace built on one person's silence is only a prettier word for control. I do not live inside that kind of peace anymore. If you have stayed with me this long, tell me what you think. Was I wrong to send that final gift? Or was it the only honest way to end a lie that had lasted 12 years? Where are you listening from tonight? And what would you have done if your seat at the family table came with 5 rules designed to erase you? Subscribe and stay close. There are more stories like mine still ahead, and I do not want you to miss what truth can do when it finally arrives on time.